do you tend to do the same handful of exercises like this and like this and find that your strength really isn't improving in the way that you'd like to? No offense to those exercises, I find them, well, average. Actually, it's not just those two that are pretty much time wasters. There are 3 more of these stereotypical exercises that simply don't do anything for you as an aging runner. In fact, I'd go so far to say that if you're 50 years and older, these exercises are useless. This video might just hold the key to breaking through to new levels of strength for you as an aging runner. And the good news is building strength in order to get faster and avoid injury is so much easier when you know what you shouldn't be doing in the first place. So let's have a look at these 5 absolutely useless exercises you definitely should not be doing. Be warned, number 5 is definitely going to trigger a lot, and I mean a lot, of gym bunnies. A lot of people are going to love that this first exercise made the list. And if I'm honest, this exercise doesn't even exist in Coach Parry land. We never prescribe it in our training programs. Burpees are often prescribed by physical trainers who perhaps don't have a sports science background and are really utilizing this exercise to make people feel like they're working very, very hard, when in actual fact, there are other alternatives that would do the job even better. Burpees are an extremely dynamic movement that require a lot of strength in order to be performed properly. When not performed correctly with very poor technique, there's a massive inherent risk to different parts of the body, and that can be different for everyone depending on where their strengths lie. In particular, if you have a weak core, your lower back is then working hard to stabilize your body every time you come down. Same thing with your upper body. Your shoulders take a lot of strain, taking the impact of that load as you come down, and then as you're jumping back up, if you have very tight hip flexors, which most runners do, you will be able to feel that a lot in your hip flexors. It's not necessarily strengthening them because it's such a dynamic, intense exercise. There's far more better exercises that we can do to reduce the risk of injury and still get a similar benefit. The first alternative I highly recommend is a squat jump. So when you're doing a squat jump, ensure really good squat technique, using your arms as you go down to counter movement yourself and spring vertically into the air. Just ensure when you land gently on your feet in a nice squat position. For thrusters, you want to hold a weight like a goblet against your chest under your chin. From here again, you're going to go into a nice deep squat with the weight under your chin, and then drive yourself up, squeeze the glutes at the top, and as you do that, lifting the weight up above your head. The more you get used to that exercise, the more you can make it one movement by going down into the squat and driving up as you step back up. Come back down into the squat and drive down. Plank push-ups are my nemesis. I hate this exercise, but it is such a good exercise. Starting off on your hands, straight arms. From there, nice straight body. Ensure the core is engaged, no bums in the air, no bums dropping down. And then we go down onto our left elbow, down onto our right elbow, up onto our left hand, up onto our right hand, swap sides. Down onto the right elbow, down onto the left, up and up. Be careful to not sway the hips from side to side too much, and try and keep that core and the shoulders nice and stable throughout the whole exercise. The second star to make this useless list might spark some controversy, but I remind you, these are specifically for runners over the age of 50. It's box jumps. Box jumps are used to train power. Yes, runners do need aspects of power, but we can train that in many different ways. If you do want to do box jumps, because they are a good exercise, it's not that they're a bad exercise, it's just that they may not be specific to runners over the age of 50, and they come with an inherent risk. If you do want to do box jumps, make sure that you vary the size of your box. A box that is 20 centimeters high as a starting point is perfectly fine to get some explosive, vertical explosive action from that box. Of course, we can move that up and up and up, but then again, I think there are more dynamic, running specific exercises that you can be doing. Jumping onto a 60 centimeter size box really isn't worth your time and comes with a very, very big risk of injury. Explosive movements are important as we age. Changes in our neuromuscular function, so how our brain speaks to our muscles, is degenerating over time. And so explosive movements help with that for sure. It also helps with bone formation and making sure that the bones have a load and getting stronger. But again, we want to do these exercises balancing risk versus reward. And so box jumps for me have a very high risk with reward. And so I'd far rather we do other exercises that have the reward, but a much lower inherent risk. Some alternatives to risking your shins on a box jump. First one is horizontal jumps. As you would start in a squat position, use your arms for counter movements, and you want to try and jump as far forward horizontally on both legs to start off. We can progress that to single legs, but we're looking for double legs to start. So down into a squat, use your arms, counter movement, and try and displace yourself horizontally forward. Land gently in a nice squat position. Lateral jumps are great because they work on our external rotators, our glutes, which is very important for running. So single leg, starting on your outside leg. So if I'm standing on my right side, I then jump across to my left leg, landing on one leg, and then the same thing, staying on that single leg, trying to jump across to your right leg again. Here again, we are trying to get as far distance as we can horizontally, but laterally, and ensuring good landing technique. If you find you're falling all over the place, make that jump a little bit shorter so that you can control the landing and hold the landing for a second or two. Pogo jumps are a great way to elicit some early plyometrics into your plan, and we can always progress them to be more and more explosive. Standing on two legs, you will start just in one spot, jumping up and down on your toes. So not landing flat onto your heels, just on your toes. You can also just rest your hands on a chair or a wall in front of you for a little bit of balance, just to get that response. Once you get that and you feel like that's easy, we go to single leg and we're trying to hop as high as we can, and this is key, with as little contact with the ground as we can. So as quick contacts with the ground and trying to stay in one place. Box jumps tend to eat your shins for breakfast. You don't want to feel that sort of pain. And so they come with a very big inherent risk of injury. Exercise number 4, though, is deceptive because it doesn't seem like it would have an inherent risk of injury, but it really does. But first, number 3, Olympic lifts or weightlifting, and in particular, snatches and cleans. These are very complex exercises and they are very technical. And so if you do these exercises with the wrong technique, again, there's a very high risk of injury. When I teach these exercises to athletes who require the exercise themselves, I break the exercise down into 3 different parts. So for a clean, as an example, I would start them off on a deadlift, making sure that they know how to do that deadlift properly. From there, we would move on to a high pull, making sure they have the ability to get under the bar, and then we would have also started with some front squats so they get a good feeling of what it feels like to have that bar in front of their body. If you just start doing some cleans with a heavy weight and not understanding that movement, you are really going to put yourself at injury. And so the time it would take for me to teach you how to do a clean or a snatch correctly, I'd far rather spend that time making you stronger already. Again, that risk or benefit reward system is a little bit off there. Let's use the time to make you stronger already, as opposed to training and exercise that doesn't really bring much value to you and your running. Snatches and cleans in particular are exercises that are used to elicit power. And the reps and sets we use to prescribe, they are heavy loads, low reps, and low sets with lots of rest in between. And many other types of functional fitness places tend to do these with very high reps, very high intensity, and very high loads with no regard to technique. And that is a recipe for disaster. Some alternatives to still elicit power, because runners still do require some power. The first is skipping. Skipping is a great exercise when prescribed correctly, because again, too much will elicit more damage. Because it is plyometric, it does also work on the stabilizers in the lower leg, in particular the soleus, which is vital for running. The high pull I mentioned earlier that I use as a way to teach someone how to clean is a great exercise. Holding a weight, a kettlebell, even your elastic bands at below your hips. From there, you want to reach and powerfully pull that bar or your bands up, and so that the bar is under your chin and your elbows are nice and high. The key thing here is that your elbows get high, you don't have your elbows down, and we want that to be a powerful exercise. You can also start that in a little bit of a squat or hip hinge movement so that you can drive the hips forward and get your arms up nice and high. A push press is a progression on a shoulder press. So shoulder press is just pushing the weight up and down, but we're looking for a little bit of power here. So going down into a little bit of a squat and then generating as much force as you can up into the sky with the weight or bar above your head. You want to ensure that you're standing nice and upright, that you have tension in your whole body. Bring the weight down nice and slowly, don't just drop it, and then you can repeat. Kettlebell swings are probably my absolute favorite exercise to use for runners because it affects the posterior chain so much, the back, glutes, hamstrings, all of the important parts. Using a kettlebell also changes your axis of rotation. So whereas when you hold a dumbbell, the weight is over here, a kettlebell puts it here. So it moves physics around and it just elicits different responses within the body. For a kettlebell swing to be performed properly, and this is vital because everyone I teach does it wrong from the beginning, it is not a squat. It needs to be done in a hip hinge movement. Stand about 1/2 meter away from a wall, and what you want to do is have your knees nice and relaxed, not locked, and you're going to just gently try and tap your bum against that wall and pushing the upper body over. That is a hip hinge. So that is the movement there. Then holding your kettlebell, your arms stay locked. We don't lock them fully, but we don't want to bend them either. So you're not pulling the bell up to you. And then in that movement, hinge backwards, let the bell come between your thighs, and then you're going to drive your hips forward, and that will bring the bell up. You're actually using your shoulders to bring the bell up. We go back down into that movement, strong core, and driving the hips forward will elicit that movement. This is not what it is, and it's when you do a squat movement, so we're not bending our knees going down and trying to swing the bell forward. And now, coming in at useless exercises for runners over the age of 50, we have number 4. Other than using this exercise to get a really good looking six-pack on the beach, this exercise is pretty useless for running. Enter good old sit-ups. Other than your rectus abdominis keeping your torso upright while you are running, it doesn't form any other part for running, and there are many other exercises where we can still work rectus and the rest of your core. Another reason why I don't like sit-ups, in particular for runners over the age of 50, is very often there's some degeneration of the spine, and movements that have more back flexion will really exacerbate the pain in those areas. And sit-ups are back flexion exercises. People always regard sit-ups as a core exercise, and yes, it's working some of the abdominals, but what we have to understand about what is core is that if this is your spine over here, the core is not just the front of your spine, it is all of the muscles that surround the spine. So it is your entire trunk. And so when we're working our core, we really need to ensure that we're working the whole core and not just these muscles over here. And this is why I would far rather do a suitcase squat as an example to an alternative to sit-ups. Holding a medium to heavy weight on one hand, as you would a suitcase, next to your body, your other hand is still there, or you can have your other hand up here. You would then go and do a really good technique squat. So bum goes back, and the goal is not to let your shoulder drop. So you have to use your core to keep you nice and strong so that you are not dipping over to that one heavier side. Make sure obviously to do it on the other side as well, but that is a great exercise to have stability in your core, also more functional for running as well. My problem with sit-ups as well is that people never tend to do the eccentric part of sit-ups properly. So what I mean by that, the sitting back down to the floor. They're just so tired that they flop back down. And so you're only really working your rectus concentrically one way and not working it as you go down, allowing it to still strengthen while the muscle fibers are pulling apart. And now for that exercise that might have triggered some gym bunnies, kipping pull-ups. Pull-ups can help with postural aspects. That is very good to get strong in the upper body as well, but there is no direct correlation between your upper body strength and your improvements in running. Of course, as we are aging, we want to look after our bones and we want to build lean muscle. So yes, I think in that regard, pull-ups are a great exercise. But then why would you do kipping pull-ups? I would far rather you regress that exercise so that you're getting more strength aspects from it, as opposed to then swinging up and down on a bar. Assisted pull-ups is a great way to do pull-ups if you can't actually do a proper pull-up yet. So you could be assisted with your partner holding your knees or your feet, or if you have a long resistance band, you can either put that across the bar or hang it from the top of the bar. Put your foot in and allow that to help you a little bit. If that is even too hard, and actually starting off, this is a great place to start, is to start with some scapular stabilization. So what you do there is hanging from the bar, just pulling your shoulder blades together. So just a little bit of activation in the scapula, really starting to get those muscles firing. That will be great for posture in running, so we don't have this rounded back. And then the next one from there that will really help with you getting to do pull-ups is doing eccentric pull-ups. So jumping up onto the bar, getting some help to get up there, and then slowly letting yourself down. That is going to build so much strength in and around the back. These alternatives give you way more bang for your buck to look after your posture and build upper body lean muscle mass than wasting your time in the gym. Now that you have a better understanding of what you should definitely not be doing in terms of strength training as an aging runner, these are the only 5 strength exercises you actually need.